This is the Serpent Mound, highlighted in yellow, one of the thousands of mounds constructed by Native Americans across the eastern half of North America in ancient times. The Serpent Mound is located along Ohio Brush Creek, shown in blue, near Peebles, Ohio in Adams County. We will zoom out to the wider region. The Ohio River is here. Cincinnati, Ohio is here. Columbus, Ohio is here. Serpent Mound is here in Adams County, just southwest of Chillicothe. We will take an even wider step back to show the eastern half of North America. I have highlighted the Ohio River and the Mississippi River because they are of critical importance to the civilizations of ancient eastern North America. Modern Ohio was a major center of ancient Native American civilization. The Serpent Mound is likely associated with multiple cultures over its long history, which may extend back some 2,300 years. Archaeologists have devised 3 distinct cultural periods of mound building in the eastern United States, and southern Ohio is a part of each one of these. These are the Adena culture, the massively widespread Hopewell culture, and the Fort Ancient culture. The Fort Ancient culture, centered in Ohio, was concurrent with the Mississippian culture further west down in the Mississippi Valley. It's important to remember that these names, Adena, Hopewell, and Fort Ancient, were developed by archaeologists, and we don't know what the ancient Americans would have actually called these civilizations. We also don't know if these cultures are the same civilization or different civilizations with similar features. So, for instance, we don't know if the Adena culture is one civilization or multiple civilizations sharing similar traits. The native nations that lived in this area during more recent historical times are the Shawnee and the Miami, among other people. It's logical to say that the ancient Shawnee and other nations of this region were part of a civilization that built mounds here in ancient Ohio like Serpent Mound. Many archaeologists have disagreed with this assertion, wanting to stress that we don't know who those builders were. However, if we slide across the Atlantic Ocean to Europe, it is accurate to say that the temples and aqueducts of ancient Rome were built by ancient Italians. It would be rather strange to say that no, Italians have nothing to do with the ancient cultures of Italy. So it's the same in North America. We have 3 widespread ancient cultural areas that are associated with the Serpent Mound in earlier times: the Adena, Hopewell, and Fort Ancient. To keep the chronology simple, we can give rough, even dates for these periods. The Adena culture starts about 1000 BC or 3000 years ago. The Hopewell culture starts at about 2000 years ago. Finally, the Fort Ancient period begins about 1000 years ago. For some context, the Adena culture is concurrent with the rise of the Phoenician alphabet in the Mediterranean, where the letters you are seeing on the screen ultimately derive from. The Hopewell culture would be concurrent with the Roman Republic and Roman Empire. And the Fort Ancient culture would be concurrent with the era of castles and cathedrals in Europe, typified by Notre Dame in France. The Serpent Mound is actually difficult to ascribe to a single period, but archaeologists assign it to one of these 3 major cultural eras, the Adena, Hopewell, and Fort Ancient. Some archaeologists say the Serpent Mound is part of the earlier Adena culture, while others claim it was built more recently during the Fort Ancient period. The December 1972 issue of National Geographic notes that archaeology had ascribed the Serpent Mound to the Adena culture, so the site could be 2,000 or 3,000 years old. It's very possible that the Serpent Mound, or part of it, was built during the earlier Adena times, but later Hopewell and Fort Ancient societies added to it, improved upon it, or rebuilt it. A 2014 radiocarbon dating survey of the site revealed widespread dates throughout the site, with a great many radiocarbon dates returning ages from the 4th century BC. This means the initial construction was likely some 2,300 years ago, and this study supports an initial period of Adena construction followed by later repair and renovation over the centuries. Serpent Mound has attracted the attention of the press for almost 200 years now. In 1848, Native American mounds were the subject of the first issue of the Smithsonian Institution's series entitled Contributions to Knowledge. The Smithsonian stated, "Probably the most extraordinary earthwork thus far discovered at the West is the Great Serpent." This is the 1848 Smithsonian illustration of the Serpent Mound. There has always existed different interpretations of what the oval shape is here. The 1848 Smithsonian describes the snake's head as either swallowing or ejecting an oval figure which rests partially within the distended jaws. A common interpretation is that the oval is an egg, thus the formation in its entirety is a snake eating an egg. The Smithsonian noted that there are two small triangular elevations on either side of the serpent's head, shown here on the 1848 illustration. However, these features are quite faint and essentially hard to detect. If we go back to the aerial image, we don't see those triangular elevations on the snake's neck. The egg, if indeed that is what the oval object represents, is about 50 yards across. The serpent's mouth is about 20 yards from mouth to neck. The snake's body winds about 385 meters following the coils. So if the snake was unwound, it would stretch some 400 yards. Here's a U.S. government aerial survey image of the region. The Serpent Mound is here. We can switch to a LiDAR map of the area. In addition to the Serpent Mound here, there is a circular mound present just to the south of the feature here. These sorts of sites usually don't stand alone. They are part of a larger complex. It wasn't just academics at the Smithsonian that had an interest in the Serpent Mound in 1848. In November of that year, the Jeffersonian Republican in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, published the Smithsonian's findings on its front page. In 1888, the News Herald in Hillsboro, Ohio, discussed the recent archaeological examinations at the site by Professor F.W. Putnam. Putnam headed an effort to purchase the land at Serpent Mound, preserving the site for future generations as a park. So the Serpent Mound became a model for the preservation of archaeological and historical sites. The real estate at the site could be purchased by a concerned group and then preserved from destruction by plowing, the building of roads, or town development. In the latter 19th century, some archaeologists came to the conclusion that works like the Serpent Mound must have been the construction of faraway civilizations. A Professor F.W. Hooper asserted that there must have been a connection between the mound builders and the civilizations of Mesoamerica and Peru. There's two ways to look at this kind of interpretation. It is tempting to look at the great sites of Mesoamerica and conclude that monumental sites in Upper North America, like Serpent Mound, must have been some sort of connection with the cultures of Mesoamerica. Many 19th century scholars thought there might have been actual Aztecs or Incas spreading northward, creating these works. This more fantastical interpretation, that a Mesoamerican or South American civilization had expanded far into the Ohio River Valley region, led to ideas of lost civilizations and mysterious peoples, a notion that has continued sometimes in popular press. However, it's much more likely that Serpent Mound in Ohio was constructed not by a fantastical lost civilization, but rather by local natives of the Ohio River Valley, like the Shawnee and Miami. However, it is entirely possible that the Fort Ancient culture, for instance, was aware of and in contact with Mesoamerican civilizations like the Aztecs. Vast trade networks connected these civilizations across the continent. The Fort Ancient people would easily be in contact with the Mississippian people, and the Mississippians would in turn be in contact with southwestern nations like the Pueblo, who in turn had contact with Mesoamerica. Through these networks, ideas, motifs, religious concepts, and other tangible and intangible goods did transfer across the continent. Let's zoom back to the Serpent Mound in Ohio. At summer solstice, the serpent's head points to sunset, the longest day of the year, which falls on June 20th or June 21st. It's possible that other parts of the snake may correlate to other cosmic phenomenon. One idea is that the serpent's whole shape acts like a calendar. Ancient farmers needed calendars to guide sowing and reaping cycles, just like people today need calendars to plan and organize. In a prehistoric context, the universal time teller is the location of the sun at sunrise and sunset. We will face to the east to view the sunrise position and look at a three-dimensional view to see the vantage point better. It's possible that other parts of the serpent acted as calendar markers. Whereas the serpent's head points to sunset on the longest day of the year, the first coil after the head points to summer solstice sunrise on that morning of the longest day of the year in June. The middle coil appears to point to the fall and spring equinoxes as it points to sunrise on those days. Equinox is Latin for equal night, the day in spring and fall when the day is equally split between light and dark. The spring equinox, or vernal equinox, occurs about March 21st. The fall equinox, or autumnal equinox, occurs about September 23rd. The third coil appears to point to the winter solstice sunrise on December 21st or December 22nd, the darkest day of the year. While some may be skeptical of these astronomical interpretations for sites like Serpent Mound, calendar information is critical for people who do agriculture or even part-time horticulture, guiding planting and reaping periods. The different meanings or purposes of Serpent Mound remain elusive. What is known, though, is Serpent Mound meant something important to the ancient cultures that built, renovated, and used the site. The landscape of North America is covered with the signatures of ancient cultures that once spread far and near, like the Adena, Hopewell, and Mississippian, who left vestiges of their civilizations. Serpent Mound has been woven into the landscape of southern Ohio for over 2,000 years.